Hey, everybody. Give everybody a few minutes to kind of pile in. Super excited to see everybody today, or at least get to see everybody's names today. This is our second episode of the series. I'm super excited. Oh, and I see some names popping up. Awesome. Alejandro. Hey, what's going on? Janae. Hi. Oh, my girl Maho. Hi. Hey, everybody. Oh, and there's Laura there too. Hey, Laura. Awesome. Well, like I said, hey, everybody. Welcome to Tango's Women for Women in Tech Talks, the second episode of the series. This is where we explore the journeys of women in technology. My name is Alicia Gale, and the goal of these talks is for Tango as a company to connect with the tech community as a whole and to better understand the industry from particularly the female perspective. We want to participate in the global conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, Tango, we're working to become the premier nearshore staff augmentation and product development consultancy. And while our culture has been incredibly inviting to date, we took an honest inventory in 2020 and decided we need to start making some intentional changes. To put it very simply, we looked around the table and saw there was some folks missing. So we're dedicated to not only changing that this year, here and now, but to the education around why that happens globally, right? And having that larger conversation. So if you're an exceptional engineer and you're based in Mexico or in Latin America, anywhere, and you're looking for an inclusive environment, please check out our website. We'd love to have you. Actually, Carla, if you could drop that in the comments for me, I'd really appreciate it. I also have my colleague, Carla. She's going to be listening in on the side. Huge shout out to her for not only setting up these events and managing them, helping us get the word out to everyone, but just being there for me in the times of need and helping me just completely set up this entire event. This was originally her idea as well. So huge shout out to Carla. Thank you so much. I couldn't be happier to help you out. And she's occasionally going to be dropping different like links and reference material in the comments. So definitely keep an eye on the comments and her hopping in there. Awesome. So let's go ahead and dig in. Today, we'll be chatting with Laura, the founder of Tattd, an app that connects tattoo artists to new clients, bringing them kind of out of that pen and paper world and into the virtual space. And then we'll bring on Melanie, who founded Shaka Culture, and is dedicated to transforming company culture with an organized and highly effective approach, because she believes that everybody deserves to be happy at work. And I don't think I could find a single person who would disagree with that. So let's go ahead and bring our first speaker on, Laura. Give her just a moment here.
Hey,
Laura, how's it going?
That's good. How are you?
Doing great. Living the dream, as they say.
Love it.
So first and foremost, Laura, could you give us a little bit of background and just a brief description of who you are, where you came from?
Yeah, definitely. So I've been in the early stage startup world for the better part of 10 years, right? So kind of launched in at an early stage incubator, worked off of founders' couches for no money. Like, there's like maybe a landing page involved, but like super early stage is where I feel most comfortable. If I was thrown into like a corporate job, I would just have no idea what to do.
Do I need a hall pass?
Yeah, literally. Oh my God. If I have a badge to sign in, like I'm just going to get lost. I don't know what to do here. So I love it, but I love the energy of it. I love, I'm not traditionally creative. I feel like, you know what I mean? Like I'm a stick figure drawing type of person, but somehow I've found like a creative outlet in like feeling like I'm building something right from the ground up. So like, that's kind of like my version of being a creator kind of. So I started Tattd probably almost 2 years ago. Which, again, I've been through however many startups and gone through however many accelerator programs and all of that good stuff. So deep in the tech space. I've had the idea for Tattd for almost 6 years. So for a long time, I kind of was just kicking this idea around and like, oh, when's it time to take the leap? And, I think when you get to that point where it's like, this doesn't make sense that I'm not doing this anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, I've had this idea for so long. The passion's been this high as long as I've wanted to do this, like stop, like either give up the idea or do it. Right. So that's when I took the leap about 2 years ago. We launched late last year. and are currently raising our seed round, but just have had amazing traction and responsiveness, and just the relationships, we've created with artists and, with our superpower users and stuff like that. And the community has been super exciting.
That's awesome. That's so awesome to hear. And I know the last time we kind of spoke, or when we got introduced, right? You told me that one of the main things, one of your main passion projects is getting artists paid, right? And I kind of wanted to circle to that point of the conversation. Where did this idea really like spark from? Like what inspired it?
Yeah, so I think it started first, just as someone who's super heavily tattooed, as you can see.
You can't tell because of the sweater, but same.
Yeah, exactly. Just so I can like validate myself. Like I swear I'm tattooed. But as a tattoo, so working at early stage startups, I feel like you're really always kind of finding gaps in the way that things currently work. You know what I mean? Like I love that. I mean, obviously, like COVID is horrible, but people understand QR codes now. That's cool. You know what I mean? Like paper menus, I feel like are going to be obsolete. Like, but this is something that, has been in my head for a while. So, if you work in this early stage, you kind of are always noticing, whether or not you even want to, processes or things that feel really outdated. And, as I was getting tattoos and finding artists, this continuously came up because it's impossible, right? Before Tattd, it's impossible, right? You're Yelping, you're Googling, you're asking friends. It's the Wild West, right? And so for a long time, I was like, there's needs to be a way to fix that. When it comes to artist side of things, it's like, I think I've always been a bit mission driven, right? So like I actually studied nonprofit management. That was actually what my degree was in. And I fell into tech immediately after graduating, and it just fit me like a glove, and the rest is history. But I've always been a bit mission driven, and being here in Brooklyn, I know a lot of tattoo artists, have had, made relationship with these artists, know some, tattoo artist friends, and really hearing their side of the story and like what it's like to be an artist and, live paycheck to paycheck. And, if you're an artist, you're only using really predominantly one side of the left brain, right brain. And so they're sitting there having to figure out like, what does social media marketing mean? Like, like I dare you to say the word client acquisition to an artist. Like I dare you, So it's really cool because like I've always like had an affinity towards the art world. You can actually, that's proof. But like I remember I was in like middle school and high school, and I was like, volunteering at art museums, and like, my father's a writer, so I was always really surrounded by this very artistic world. And again, not traditionally artistic. So I think there's something really cool for me to be able to be like, all right, like I'm very business minded, so I can lend that side of my brain to artists and let them be really good at what they're good at, and be successful there. You know what I mean? And I think that's a lot of the responsiveness that we've gotten from the artist side, because I refuse to charge artists with no platform is done yet, right? Because they already are buying their own insurances and their own, inks and their own whatever materials, which is super expensive. And that's not just tattoo artists, that goes to any visual artist, you know what I mean? Right. So I felt really strongly about that. I mean, it's to the degree that like, there's been investors that I've like not accepted 6-figure checks from because they were like, well, you have to charge artists. It's a missed revenue stream. And I was more or less like, nah, I think I'm just not going to pay rent this month anymore. Because, for me it was like, it's such a hard decision, obviously. And for me, it's like, I've been working on this for so long and so much blood, sweat, and tears have gone into this that I would rather pay for Tattd for another 6 months and not accept investment if my vision is not then it wasn't worth it. If my vision is going to be changed that heavily, then the whole rest of it wasn't even, why am I, it turns into something that I didn't even want to do in the first place. Like that does such a disservice to all the work that was put in and all the drive and the dedication and the reason that I started out to do this in the first place. So it is, it's definitely an aspect of the app and, of just sort of my general mission as a founder. So, I'm definitely sticking to my guns there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It looks like Melody's on the same page as well. Love that way to stick to your values. And I fully agree, right? Like if it has to be a part of your vision, right? It is your vision, bottom line. So I'm super happy to hear that. But I'm curious, could you give us a brief description of like how the rest of it works, right? So artists can sign up and individuals can sign up. What kind of happens from there?
Yeah, exactly. So when you log in, it looks kind of like Kayak, always, attributed to that. So you choose your location, the price range that you're willing to pay, and the artist specialization, which is actually really needed to know if you're looking for a certain artist. an artist that specializes in one type of tattooing typically doesn't do, 18 different other types, right? They're really good at what they're good at. And it's their art, it's their expression. That's what they also want to do. So,
you don't want like a watercolor artist doing like fine lines kind of thing. Like, yeah.
Exactly. There can be a bit of crossover, but like if you're a traditional Japanese artist, you might not necessarily be doing like watercolor or Americana or whatever it is. So, and artists also are like, their main qualm, or one of them is like, people contact me and they don't even do their research. They're asking me to do stuff that I don't know how to do that well. You know what I mean? Like, I guess I can, like, I can get a needle and put it to your skin. I get, you know what I mean? But
see what happens.
Are you sure though? Like, you clearly have not done your research. And then like they give them a price and the person's like, what? Like, it's like, do your research, man. So it's also good. So it's a solution really for both sides, right? So it's like a proper double-sided marketplace. Really, both sides of the spectrum need this. So, let's say you do your little search, you find your local artist, you can chat with them, send them your idea. You can like create a mood board for your next tattoo idea, actually send it to them, get prices, and actually book your next appointment and put down your deposit within the app. So that's how it works. We're only live in the top 12 tattooed cities in the US though. So kind of thinking about the launch, there's this quintessential problem of like doing a double-sided marketplace at the same time. Mm-hmm. So because I don't charge artists, I was able to do a data scraping project and launch with 4,000 artists already on the app on day one of it being launched. So I mean, obviously, and then we're in the process of contacting them like, hey, like claim your profile on Tattd. But all of them have been like, oh my God, great. Thanks. Amazing. Because I don't charge them. So they're just happy to get the free marketing. You know what I mean? So that sort of allowed us to, I was adamant, like there better be on launch day in every city that we're live in, no matter what the search criteria is, there better be a good selection of artists, no matter what a user is looking for. So that's what I felt really, strongly about. And then, leading up, we did a whole thing of like getting all these artist ambassadors involved, right? And so creating super close relationships with them. They are like our boots on the ground, have a super hardcore community touch. They're out there in their shops, on their social media, just spreading the word. That was our biggest driver of growth, without a doubt. It's those personal relationships. It's like there's a lot of real to the growth, which is great, and our retention rates show that too. And then because we did all of that work, it's not like the app was live and they were like, hey, let's look at getting users now. We like already had like wait lists going. We already had like all these people like sitting here waiting for the launch. We're actually a couple weeks late. And people were like up in arms. We ended up having to push.
That's such a great sign, though.
It was as a founder. I feel like I didn't sleep for those 2 weeks either, though. It was great because literally I was getting emails, DMs, everything. Just like, I thought y'all were supposed to be live. Like, where is this? Like, I was like, so that was really cool. But yeah, so whenever we launched, we had thousands of people within the first week logging in.
Wow, that's crazy.
This community around it. So it was awesome.
That's so crazy. And like you said, I know the last time we spoke, right, a lot of it is about the world for a tattoo artist is very pen and paper right now. It's super old school, right? It's very like those old school waitress tickets, right? Like it's very old school. And so to launch with like that many users right out of the gate is like super impressive. That's crazy. But I do kind of want to pivot a little bit over to some other organizations that you work with. I know you work with Speak Her, and then I can't remember the name of the organization you told me. I apologize. But the organization that you work with, where you work with middle school children or middle school girls in particular, to kind of, if you could speak to it a little bit more, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. So we'll do Speak Her first, and then Girls with Impact is the
Girls with Impact. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So Speak Her is under the umbrella of AGS, which is App Growth Summit. And they do a ton of events and conferences internationally for people in the mobile space specifically, right? So, tech and also niche tech, which I think is cool. From that, I think it was a couple of years ago that they started Speak Her. See what they did there. So it's cute. It's specifically so I'm an advisory board member for that organization, which is specifically to get women in tech and mobile on conference stages, right? And really highlighting their expertise. And I'm close with the founder, which is how that happened. The founder of AGS, actually. And I think I just, as per my personality, started kind of inserting myself. Oh, thank you for adding that in, Carla. I just kind
She's a whiz, isn't she?
love it. I really appreciate that. You're the best. No, but I just started kind of inserting myself into like, I think we had a call or something, or we had a chapter meeting, and I was like, hey, like, what if we did this for a chapter meeting? Like, I have this contact and I can get this speaker to whatever, you know what I mean? Like, here's another suggestion, like, just really having a loud voice in there. And they're eventually like, do you just want to be on our advisory board? Because you won't shut up about it. I was like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. But it's cool because they also, another sort of like embedded mission there is that they're giving the mic to women that probably wouldn't have had it at that point in their careers, if that makes sense. Like, they might not be VP titles yet, but they are like killing it at whatever exactly they're doing, right? And they have like big names from, HubSpot and GitHub and, Slack and like all that. They have those too, but they're also very merit based. So, you know what I mean? If someone, they think would be really awesome, they'll work with them to kind of develop their presentation and speaking skills in order to get them successful on stages and, successful in utilizing their voice. So that's a very cool detail on Speak Her, right? So it's not just, the people that already have the killer resumes, it's just people that they really think should be heard, which is cool.
That's awesome.
They're really amazing. They're really amazing. And then the second one is Girls with Impact, which is really cool. So an old colleague of mine from forever ago, I noticed on LinkedIn that she started, again, I just did this to myself. I noticed on LinkedIn that she started this nonprofit, and it was Girls with Impact, and teaching middle school and high school, like I think early high school age girls. Like most of my students were like 12, 13, maybe 14, 15, oldest. And I messaged her and I was like, that is so cool. Like, let me know if I can do anything. Like, I don't know, like, just like, tell me more about it. Like, I don't know. Just really.
It seems to be your style, Laura. I dig it. I'm here.
I'm here for it. Just like biting off more than I can chew, no matter what.
Same, girl, same.
I won't stop. I always have like multiple like jobs or whatever. I literally just like came from a consulting lunch that I just like love what this guy's doing, and so 2 hours was spent just telling him how he can go about fundraising. Anyways, so Girls with Impact is so cool. So it is a nonprofit. It just launched maybe about 2 years ago, maybe even less. But it designs curriculum for young girls that want to start their own businesses, that want to be entrepreneurs. And the curriculum they put together is like, I couldn't have done it better myself. And so that's what I was really impressed with. And of course, this woman's amazing. And, she's started businesses before. So of course it was going to be great. But just looking at the curriculum that they're teaching these 13-year-olds, oh my gosh, thanks, Crystal. That they're teaching these 13-year-olds, it's like, wow, that literally is all the bullet points that you do need to know, and these girls are learning what an MVP is. These girls are learning like how to validate like their concept. Like, it's really great. And what is so cool is that these 13-year-olds are so amazing. They're so smart. They're so passionate. They're coming up with these incredible, innovative ideas, and they genuinely want to launch their own businesses. What was I doing at 13? Like, I don't. It's amazing.
Am I too old to join this, Laura? Or
like, I literally want to I sent like my friends and other people the curriculum because I was like, yo, this is real stuff. I had a girl do a backpack with solar panels on it that you can plug your phone into when you get to school, like, stuff like that, where like all of it is like, the majority of what I was, the projects that they were working on is like, very mission driven, very social impact driven, very environmentally conscious. Like, these new generations, like, I know they get a bad rep because of TikTok or whatever, but like, listen up. Like, they're actually going to do some amazing things. So that was a really, really special experience. Yeah.
That's crazy. What could you think of, and I don't mean to like throw you on the spot, but could you think of some things from that particular curriculum that might be useful resources for our audience?
Yeah. So I think the majority was like the very beginning phases of planning your idea. So doing things like what an MVP is and defining what that should be. So, actually I work with, I'm telling you, this is so relevant. I work with a ton of founders that see an MVP, but what they're describing is like V3, like version 3 of what the product like 2 years after launch or something, you know?
The non-minimum viable product.
Exactly. Like minimum, like let's pay attention to that part of the description, right? So defining, okay, so what are the most essential pieces of an MVP? Like, how do you think about that? Like, what is the number one value that you're bringing? They had to define their project's UVP, like the unique value proposition of like, how is this exactly standing out? You know what I mean? And then like from that, then after you define that, then you can really go through, which features, support that. And here's some that are maybe a little bit extraneous or not as relevant to what that UVP is. They had to chart their competitors, like sort of on a graph, I forgot the name of it, but essentially like charting which ones have different aspects that, all right, so this one is a little bit more luxury rather than like a little bit more sort of like layman style or whatever, you know what I mean? So where do I fall in relation to that competitor, and how do I differentiate myself compared to what else is in the market currently? Like, this is like high level stuff,
right?
It's really impressive. It's really impressive. Yeah.
That's intense. And in the best ways. I definitely don't mean that in a negative way, but like, wow, what a lot of things it makes me think about too. Like, what was I doing when I was 13?
Not that.
What are any of us doing right now?
Right.
Well, awesome. We do have just a few minutes left before we get to bring on Melanie and talk about Shaka Culture. So I was hoping, did you have any advice for anybody who might be listening, any women in technology who are looking to kind of either branch out on their own and start something new, or just maybe struggling with the current journey that they have and are kind of looking to figure out where they fit in technology?
Yeah, definitely. I think definitely leaning on any sort of mentors, advisors, people that you respect in the industry. What's really cool and I think unique to the sort of startup industry is that, as close to the chest as, investors might be with money, they're not with their time. People will give you 15 minutes on their calendar, 30 minutes on their calendar, really pretty easily. Definitely a lot of entrepreneurs. I've had so many meetings with so many entrepreneurs that I respect to kind of like pick their brain and like hear about their journey. And because they get so much help, it's almost like they pay it forward. And I think that's a bit unique to the industry. So, if you're thinking about taking that leap, or if you can't decide if you want to go left or right, or you kind of want to explore this sector of the tech world, like LinkedIn some people, put some time on people's calendars, send a cold email, say, listen, like I would love to like send you an Uber Eats gift card and buy you lunch and get, 30 minutes of the time, whatever it is, you know what I mean? That is, I think, has been one of the most instrumental things. I'm thinking about the maybe earlier stages of my career, kind of as I was finding my path. That was one of the most helpful.
Gotcha. And I feel like that's probably a large portion of, where some of our speakers are going to start coming in as well. It's something that we sort of found out as well as we're reaching out to either entrepreneurs or people that you would think would be unreachable, right? Like yourself, Laura, right? You would think that you would be unreachable, but you're not, right? We reached out to you and said, hey, would you like to come on? And you were so jacked about it, right? So you never know. I absolutely love that advice. Before we let you go, do you have any books or other material resources that you might recommend to our audience?
Ooh, so there's one that I guess it's just top of mind right now. And I'm just thinking like from a speaker context is right now we're talking about like how exactly, because, being a good speaker and presenter, like that's a hard skill. And, I guess I feel very much a responsibility to be a voice for women in tech. It's something I feel passionately about. And once I feel passionate about something, I automatically have this thing where I have all the responsibility in the world to do whatever I can to forward that, whatever that thing is.
A mirror?
No, exactly. Yeah. You did that exact thing, starting this, which I think is amazing, but she has an amazing book and resources. There is someone by the name of Nancy Duarte. And I'll put it in the chat actually after I get off, but Nancy Duarte. And she essentially tracked different speeches. She wrote this amazing book, and she tracked Steve Jobs announcing the iPhone. And she tracked the MLK I Have a Dream speech. And then she tracked a speech done by Hitler, Loki. And each of those speeches followed the same sort of narrative graph, if you will.
Oh, like interesting.
The art of doing a good speech or presentation, or all those like narrative cues and structures, or there was a piece of advice where it's like, if you speak it as far as like, here's how it is now, like right now the state of things is that you have to go online and do hours and hours of research in order to find your tattoo artist. look at how it could be. And it's kind of like this like cue of people that are like, oh no, that's not good. Oh, like, and you get the responsiveness. It's a great resource. And yeah, I'll put it in the chat if anyone's interested in maybe pursuing that.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, you guys.
See you in a bit. All right. Awesome. Let's go ahead and bring Melanie online. Give me just a moment. Thank you, Laura. Really appreciate your time. Always love talking to you. Awesome. Thanks so much for dropping the link. Okay, awesome. And it looks like Mel's connecting now. Yeah, no worries, Mel. I see it. It shows that you're connecting right now. Sometimes it just takes a moment. No worries at all. We will have some time at the end to go through a question and answer session, and we've allotted about 15 minutes for that. So no worries at all. Be sure to take our time here. I'll see who else we have online in the meantime. Oh, David. I think I know that, David. Hey. Oh, Mari. Hey, how's it going? Terry, what's up? And a quick reminder to y'all, be sure if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, be sure to drop it in the comments section and we'll be sure to address those questions as soon as we get to that question and answer session. Let me go ahead and try to get you connected again, Mel. I think we might have had an error. There we go.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Great.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for hopping on, Mel. We really, really appreciate your time. I'm a big fan of the word appreciate, if you can't tell. If you don't mind, could you give us a little bit about your background and your journey in a few words?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my background started, I got really interested in entrepreneurship for one of the reasons that Laura mentioned, where I noticed that in the entrepreneurship industry, people just have an open door and they want to help everyone win. There's enough space for everyone to win and for everyone to serve one another. And that like really intrigued me versus some of the corporate style jobs that I was exploring because I was in the finance industry formerly. So I actually ended up taking my career into working for a startup. I started on their channel partner sales team and then moved on to their finance team as an analyst and just got to learn about the back end of what does it look like to scale a startup, to interact with investors and what the leaders of a startup company think about and care about. And all this time kind of was brewing for ideas and had the idea for Shaka, which you mentioned is my now company. I had left my job about a year ago and launched Shaka, and we are a company culture application. I'm focused on creating a sense of community and bringing people together and making happier workplaces. So that is how I spend my days, and it's a really great feeling when I get an email saying something like Shaka is the best part of my month. I just think there's a lot of things about work that can bog us down or bring us down, and if I can be a positive piece of technology in the suite of all the technologies that companies use, that will be really valuable to me.
Love it. Love it. Tell us a little bit more about Shaka, how it works. Thank you so much, Carla. Gosh, she's so quick. But could you tell us a little bit more about Shaka, how it works and how it improves culture?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of background. I actually, when I started ideating, one, did a ton of research calls, interviews with HR and business leaders. What were their pain points? What would make their culture better? But also at the same time, I was studying the psychology of happiness and taking some different courses around what actually psychologically makes people happy. So as I was exploring my different features and the ideas of how is this platform going to work, I was considering both of those things because I wanted it to actually have a positive mental impact. So what Shaka does is we have different features and we're always growing and developing more. But it's all about creating relationships for people, giving them opportunities to achieve goals and have a sense of community at their organization. So one thing Shaka does is you can set how frequently you would like to meet a new colleague at your company. And then we integrate with your calendar and your email, and we schedule those meetings for you at the frequency of your choice so that Karen in finance is getting paired with maybe the CTO at some points. And they're just 20-minute meetings and they have conversation starters provided. They're easy to fill. Companies can also run challenges within Shaka, and they can be team-based challenges or individually driven. I really enjoy the team ones because they really create a sense of camaraderie. I've had teams run really fun challenges, my favorite ones being philanthropic drives, whether that's a canned food drive this month and submit how big your tower of cans has gotten.
Love it.
Health challenges like walking challenges, healthy recipe challenges. I even had someone run a challenge that was how many avocados can you eat this month, which is like the quintessential California challenge right there. But
I'm dying to
and
know
then
how many did they get to?
I actually need to know that off the top of my head. I don't know. It was only 1 week. And then the last thing right now that Chaka can do is there's a home base for employee interests and resource groups to pop up. And what I love about this is it can be diversity and inclusion groups, women in the workplace groups. It can also be interest based. Our Frisbee club that goes out on Thursdays, our company book club, our DIYers who just want to share tips. But these little communities that pop up give you a sense of belonging because there's other people with interests that are similar to yours. But it also creates little micro communities where employees can step up as leaders. Like, hey, I run all of our outreach or our programming for our women in the workplace group. And it sets up opportunities for you to really take ownership of something beyond just your regular tasks that are in your job description.
Well, and what a necessary step for companies right now, right? I mean, with everything going on with COVID, it's still definitely a thing, right? I know that I just actually heard from our CRO that Portland is kind of locking down again in a little bit of a way. So we know that distance is still going to be there. So having those communities and being able to kind of manage all of that online, I feel like that's such a necessary thing given this time frame, right? That being said, though, were you terrified to start in the middle of COVID? I mean, what was the thought process? What was the pitfalls that you had? I want to hear it all.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had the idea for Shaka before COVID hit. And then COVID hit and a ton of people lost their jobs. And I was lucky enough to maintain my career at that time. But I was looking at this market like, holy moly, all these companies are going remote. They need a tool like Shaka. They like this hybrid work thing is going to last forever. And we're finding that it is going to be a really long-term solution. And so actually I was looking at these events like, get some fire behind you, Melanie, like get this thing going. I left my job after that, like in the middle of a pandemic. People were looking at me like, what are you doing? You're a little crazy. You're leaving your career at this time. But it was just like the world needed this right now. And I was able to get some really quick beta clients because people were scrambling, thinking, how are we going to keep our employees connected? Our entire company culture was based around our weekly luncheons that we'd host, and we can't do it anymore. So it was kind of great timing for me, actually. And then, honestly, a little bit lucky that the world has found that this has been a productive way to work and that they're going to continue to offer these options long term. I think it really puts Shaka in a great position to continue to develop and solve problems for this new normal that we are going to enter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm curious too, for whether with Shaka or without Shaka, do you have any specific ideas for how women could empower other women in the workplace? I feel like it's maybe a little bit more difficult with us being distanced. So how would we be able to do that either through Shaka or just online?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that Shaka is working on is actually a mentorship feature, and our
wow.
connections feature, our introductions feature, where you get paired with new people, is a really great way to like start this movement. But one thing that women can do is reach out to newer employees. If you do have any tenure at your company, reach out to new people, offer to be a source of guidance for them. Speak up for them when they're not in the room, recognize their work. Like, if a lot of times right now with all the meetings that we have, not everyone who put the work into a presentation is in the Zoom call anymore. So you need to like recognize the women that helped you get the work accomplished that you are presenting in that meeting. One thing that they're finding, which is very interesting to me, is that work from home is actually not that great for women, which is opposite of what you would think, right? Women are always busy. They maybe have families to take care of. This is offering them a chance to come back into the workplace and balance work and life. That is true, and it is great, and it is helping employee retention, but is not helping women's career progression. So what they're seeing is that women are less likely to interrupt and speak up in Zoom calls. They are more reserved. Like we will, as women, won't contribute something unless it's valuable on a call and that we're really sure in ourselves. But sometimes men tend to speak up and voice their opinion immediately, and what Zoom is really heightening is that the loudest person in the room appears to be the most valuable. And that is not true. So that's why I'm saying do things like invite women to share their opinions on calls, because they're not just doing it naturally, and recognize that work that is coming from them if they're not the ones speaking and leading the calls. Those are really important things. And managers will need to do more like regular cadence reviews with their employees so that they know the work that they're accomplishing, because women also aren't typically the braggers. Not that there's anything against men, but women tend to like shrink the work they do, where men are more likely to bolster it up. So managers being really keen on what are my employees accomplishing, and what are they like, not just what they're speaking out, but what are they actually getting done, and what is the value of their work, is going to be really important.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's really interesting too. And I'm kind of reflecting on my last few Zoom calls, like, oh, I wonder if I could have spoken up a little bit more. Taking that and put it in my pocket for later, Mel. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Did you have any other or any resources like books or other media that might help kind of bring that out of women specifically, right? And I totally understand where you're coming from. I feel like this is something we touched on in our last episode as well. Our last spot in the series was women don't speak up as often, right? They don't voice their opinion about getting promotions and things like that. Do you have any materials that you've used to personally build your confidence?
Yeah, so my favorite book, it's all encapsulating of everything women need to know about like building a career, is Own It by Sally Krawcheck. I am going to preface, I have a finance background. There are parts of the book that are very finance data driven. It's very interesting. She really drills in on like the gender wealth gap and how that like starts with the gender pay gap and what women can do to like negotiate salaries. And it might seem like it's a $12,000 difference now, but when you compound all those 5% raises over all the years, you're missing out on hundreds of thousands of dollars by not negotiating those things. So her painting these things into like really big numbers made me like gain the confidence of this is a big deal. It's not a small deal. It's not $5,000. It's a big deal. It's my long-term wealth, because this is all going to compound. So she does a great job of showing you why it's important. But then the second half of her book is kind of a lot of those things I touched on, where like you need to find women or even men who are willing to speak highly of you when you're not in the room. Someone who's going to bring, not just pull up a seat at the table, because sometimes you can't pull up seats at the table sometimes. It's really hard. But if they can put your name on the table, someone who makes introductions for you, who when there's a role that opens up, they're going to say your name. Like she talks about how to build those relationships and find the people that are actually willing to do that for you and people who are just kind of talking the talk. So that's a really great book. It was Own It by Sally Krawcheck. She's completely amazing, and she's actually an entrepreneur now. She left her Wall Street career and started a women's investment platform that's called Elvest. It's all about training women to be like smarter financially and hopefully make us richer than men, because we actually have more expensive lives than men in the long term.
And you did mention, I recognize we have a couple of questions in the comments. I am not forgetting about y'all at all. We're going to circle over to the question and answer in just a minute, but I did want to ask you, Mel, you spoke about the, particularly in that book, the difference between the pay gap and the wealth gap. And I realize this is like a deep conversation, but could you kind of take us through what that means and what it means to you specifically in the last few minutes here?
Oh my gosh, yes. I'm so passionate about it. So
I thought you might be.
There's actually still a 17.5% pay gap between men and women in the United States. And that's for like roll to roll, looking at roll to roll on average. And that is just crazy because women are doing the equal amount of work, all those things. Like, you can understand why it's crazy, but that's the gender pay gap. And Shaka is kind of focused on resolving that too, because we are making conversations happen between men and women, between lowest level and highest level. We are promoting those conversations. We're putting people in communities together with the people that they wouldn't maybe have an open door to normally. But it also comes down to companies just really evaluating the equality of the pay at their organization. And that's something that they have to take upon themselves and care about themselves, but also that you have to go to bat for as a woman in the workplace. But some of those networking things that Shaka is doing and that you can do are definitely going to help solve that. But the difference between the pay gap and the wealth gap is that women are making less every year. And because of that, we're able to dedicate even just a smaller amount to our savings, which then we invest, and that compounds too. So our salaries are compounding at a slower rate than men. So that's gapping the widening. That widens the gap, English. And then additionally, our investment portfolios are starting out just a little bit smaller, and that compounds. So then you're double compounding here. And then on top of that, we're finding that women have higher costs in terms of caring for their elderly. They're the ones who step up to care for their parents, to care for ill family members. They're incurring more of those costs than men. They're living longer than men, so they have like 5 extra years of retirement to pay for here. And then also there's so many single mothers, single parents in the year that more burden is falling on them in terms of that. So it's like these 3 things that are all just like building this huge divide in wealth, and it doesn't add up, and it starts with how much you're paid. So yeah, read the book. If this is ringing true to you, read the book, and you'll like be walking into your manager's office tomorrow like, this is crap.
I love that. I love inspiring that attitude. I'm all for it. I'm so going to read this book now. I'm inspired. And I feel like that's not even touching on, not to dig into a whole nother side topic, right? But that also doesn't even mention like the pink tax, right? The difference of just cost of goods, especially like personal care items between men and women. I mean, I feel like we could have this conversation for a solid 2 hours and barely scratch the surface, because I'm so right there with you. There's such a disparity, and like to hear it laid out so plainly like that. What's the name of the book again?
Own It. OWNIT. Yes, by Sally Krawcheck. And Sally's a cool lady to follow as well.
On like LinkedIn, social media?
LinkedIn, she's really big on. And yeah, just you can read some stories about her. She speaks at a lot of the like cool webinars that are often free, so you can often hear her live too.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and pull Laura back on, and we'll get started on our question and answer session. Let me see here. We have a couple of questions already. It looks like right out of the gate hey Laura, we have a question for you, Laura. Can you share your experience about the difference between a career and a job? in parentheses, no one can fire you from your career.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've definitely had some experiences, and I'll make this a shorter answer than it could be, but, with, workplace harassment for men, from like really, really intensive discrimination, like really ridiculously misogynistic moments, and I think earlier in my career, there's this power dynamic that's immediately said, just like that's sort of like, you're welcome for having this job, so you better, stay in line type of vibe a bit, you know what I mean? Because you go through the whole like interview process and you're like, yeah, I got it, like whatever. And I think that needs to be rewritten a little bit, or I like have sort of reframed that in my mind of like, you're welcome for adding value to your company. And I think that's how you should really value yourself. So, I think that's really the dynamic that's happening, like, especially in the startup world, like I'm making your company a reality. So just keep that.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. So, there was one specific job that I left pretty immediately because of a sort of Me Too moment, if you will. And I was unemployed for a couple months and I was really, really scared. And, that was a hard moment for me, but, looking back and then, where I am now in my career, I went from that, and the next job out of that was VP of strategy for an app development firm here in New York. But during that time I was like, God, like I was, kind of thought my career was over. And I think that like, you need to know that if you're in a horrible situation, if you're, not happy in your job, if you're being mistreated in your job for whatever reason, whether they be gender specific or not, know that no one can fire you from your career. Like you still have your same skill sets. You still have your value as an employee. You still have, your resume that you can speak to. You still have a lot to add to, whatever the job that you have next or whatever other, endeavor that you go to next. So just don't be afraid of leaving something that doesn't work for you. Don't be afraid of making that leap. Or like, let's say you like, you go out on your own and then, let's say Tattd just fails tomorrow or something, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's like, it's not the end of my life as we know it at the end of the day. Like it will, like I will in 10 years, I will still like have, a professional career. You have a career, right? And so if you think of it like that, I think it makes decisions and what would be either scary or riskier decisions a lot easier.
Gotcha. We have one other question here, and this is for both of y'all. Speaking of negotiating, can you talk about your experience getting funded and why it's important to have diversity in VC? Who would like to go first and take that one?
Yeah, definitely.
Go for it. Start.
Yeah.
So I am in the process of starting my conversations with investors. So Laura will probably have more experience of like who she selects and how it's important to her who she partners with. But what I'm really working on right now is learning about the difference between how women pitch and how men pitch. Because I know I watched the last session, and some of the speakers in the last session talked about how 40% of founders are women, but they get 2.5%-ish of all venture capital dollars. And that's because there is a bias in the room. But there's things that happen when you're pitching that only occur more often to women, which is that venture capitalists, without them knowing it, they'll start asking women preventive questions. So they like look at you and they see you as a little bit less confident, and so they start to see you as a risk. And that's because you're not boasting, you're being modest, which you shouldn't probably do. And so they start asking you these preventive questions of like, what are you going to do in this scenario? What are you going to do in this scenario? And what they found is that founders who get asked preventive questions get 6 times less capital than those who get promoted questions. So like, I'm learning about how when you get asked that, you need to swerve into promotive answers. And men get asked promotive questions. And that when women pitch, they pitch on progress. They say, this is what I've already accomplished. This is how many users we have. This is what we've been able to do. And when men pitch, it's like all about the potential. So like performance versus potential. It's like, can you see my vision? Can you see how big we're going to be? Look in the future. I might have 1 user today, but I can see the millions of dollars ahead of me. So there's things that you can do to like better position yourself. But what's really interesting is that over the past few years, these venture firms have brought more women to the table, and there's actually women like sitting in the rooms, and it's not improving things. What they're finding is, unfortunately, women have the same bias when a woman pitches. So it's on you as a founder, and when you're presenting any type of project, maybe it's not a founder, maybe it's in your job, to think about how you're presenting yourself, because it's not just because there's a table of all men in front of you. When the women are at the table, they're giving the same responses and the same types of questions to these founders.
What would be an example, just to expand on that, what would be an example, if you don't mind, of how you would take I forget how you described it.
Like a
yes,
preventive
sorry. Yes, a
preventive.
You know what I'm saying. Yeah.
So, for example, when asked about like your competitors, and maybe when a woman is pitching, they bring up, well, like, hey, there's this other brand that's like, I've heard of it, like they're doing pretty good. What are you going to do to compete against them? And you start narrowing it down to like, well, we're going to combat that by doing this. Like, women will have very meticulous, detailed answers of how they're going to combat that one competitor, and like, we're going to think about them in this way. But what a man would say is like, well, the market is this big, and if we can just capture this percent of the market, and then slowly chip away at their percentage of the market, we're still going to be a $3 billion company, even if this other organization exists. So turning it into like a bigger picture or a positive, flipping
taking
it
that box around you and just opening that up and stepping right out of that. I love it. And Laura, what about you, your experience in getting funding, and why it's important to have diversity in venture capital?
Yeah, it's funny. That's great, Melanie. You now have me like, I'm running back through my pitching. I'm like, God, do I do that? Like, I might have been. That's so good to, because you're not really aware of it, right? Like, until you make yourself aware of it. So thanks for that. That's great. Yeah, I'm really interested in doing like an expose on the investment community, like literally. So, not only am I a young female, but I'm also tattooed and have facial piercings. So I'm not making it real easy for myself. You know what I mean? Really not. And I've had some experiences where you get some people on board, right? So you get like the partner, you get the junior partner, like super excited, right? But then what I think isn't as transparent is that it has to move up the ranks in order to get approved. So a lot of these VCs will actually be SPVs, which is special purpose vehicle of larger financial institutions. So even if you see on the VC's website, so many women, so much diversity, that actually is not speaking to where the capital is coming from, who are their investors, who actually owns them, like who is like the puppeteer above that VC. And this is something that I kind of didn't realize until I had some people super on board with investing Tattd, some really big checks that were going to come through. And then last minute, the lifetime partner all the way here at the top was like, oh, tattooing is immoral. That goes against our morality clauses. What? Like, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. So, I'm so interested I'm literally wanting to do research on what hasn't been invested in because it doesn't fall under white male interests. Like, they don't understand the tattooing world. They don't really get that. So, I would just be diligent about looking at what these VCs have actually invested in, and I think obviously diversity is super important, because if there's not diversity within the investment community and within VCs, there will be no diversity in innovation. I'm really interested in like communities that haven't gotten invested in, like tattooing, for example, because it just never has gotten invested in, because they could never get those guys at the very top on board, because it's not actually as diverse as what might meet the eye, maybe. And something also that I look at, because there is this like narrative of like, these women only VCs, and that's awesome. I'm sometimes pay attention to, are they investing in women that are just doing feminine products? Or are they investing in some women that have done a crypto or AI startup? Like, where are the women working with like big data? Like, you know what I mean? Like, do you think there's not women founders that do that kind of more serious stuff? Because, you know, I think that like the consumer market is really exciting, and I think that's great. And I think, you know, retail and like all of that is awesome. But if they don't invest in one single woman that's doing something that's like in maybe a more traditional startup male sense, then it's kind of like they want to invest in women, like, oh, we get that women need tampons. Like, great. Yeah, that's something that you as a founder can probably handle. You know, so it's like there's sort of grades to it. You know what I mean? There's also grades to it. That's something else that I pay attention to as well.
That's
I
super
like your
interesting.
advice on looking at who they have invested in, especially for like, so because you're gonna have to talk to so many firms to just get one to bite. So if you could weed out some by looking at their portfolio and be like, already 99% men, I'm not even gonna waste my time.
Oh yeah.
That's so smart. And I noticed in the comments as well, Ian dropped a link, and it also says the world needs to fix this BS. VCs pumped $398 million into Portland area companies in Q1. Women founders landed just 1.6% of it.
That is tragic.
It is. That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah. And it's going to be hard. I mean, as it is with anything that women really pursue in any industry that they want to get into, you know, it's going to be a little bit of a steeper climb, you know, and like, that's where there was one investor and his firm said no, and then he took a call with me after. And that's like, that never happens, right? Like after they say no, they're like, bye, you don't exist anymore. No emails answered like later. But he took a call with me and he was just like, he was a great guy. He was like, please don't become discouraged. He was like, I know that my firm said no, but I see you as a founder and please don't become discouraged. He's like, you need to talk to at least 35 VCs. Like, he's like, don't stop. And I want to hand that over to other women that maybe that VC guy didn't take the time to say that to, because it will be harder. Getting invested is already really hard. It's going to be that much harder. You know what I mean? But unless we go through that, like, and get over that hump, the state of things is going to be exactly the same.
Well, and as like you mentioned, I feel like that's the same with everything that women do, right? Everything has to do. We have to take that extra little step and work that extra bit harder, right? Which is fine, but not fine, and it's kind of why we're here, right?
Right. Exactly.
Awesome. Well, we only have a few minutes left. Does anybody else have any other questions, comments, anything they'd like to ask Mel or Laura? Oh, love that question. Any tips for male allies?
I would say just immediately, it kind of would be the same advice that you'd get to any ally, like myself as like an LGBTQ ally, you know what I mean? Or as a BLM ally, is that like, you know, it's your turn to listen a bit and to make sure that you're fully listening 100% and not only listening 50% kind of, so be conscientious about that. And then it's like, as much as like we appreciate the allies, like the idea is to give the mic to women. Like, that's kind of like, we love you as a proponent, and if you can support women without being like the sort of leading voice, if you will, that would be an amazing balance to strike. That'd be mine.
I love that. Mel, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, echoing what I said earlier about saying their name when they're not in the room, bringing them into the room. The other thing I would say is like, Lauren kind of mentioned like, check yourself. Like, I guess I was in a lot of situations in a financial role where like 2 job candidates would come to my table. I got to approve the final request. Like, we reviewed these people. Here's what we're going to pay them. And I'm like looking at this like, this doesn't make sense. So just keep your eyes open for like, there are small things and they're very small. They aren't going to stand out, but they all add up. So just like, keep your eye out for small things and keep attending events like this, because that's crazy cool that like you're here. Invite other people to come, because if like, I don't know, if a male were to say, hey, I'm going to this women in tech event, you should join, like coming from another man, that would probably go a lot further than a woman inviting a man. So if you're here, like keep coming. Thank you, and bring your friends.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for hopping on. We really appreciate your time. Once we have the recording downloaded, we'll be sure to send it out to everybody listening here and anybody who registered. And then we'll be hosting this event again. This is going to be a reoccurring series. So every last Thursday of the month at 2 p.m., keep an eye on our socials to keep up with it. But thank you so much, ladies. You have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, you all.
Bye, y'all.